Hi, hello, good morning. Welcome to today's lesson. If you like my videos, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Today I am going to teach NCERT grade 10th History chapter 2, that is about nationalism in India under part 3. In previous classes, I have explained the same chapter, that is nationalism in India, in part 1 and in part 2. In part 1, I have completed from 1498 to till extremist period in the Indian history, and in part 2 I have explained from the non-cooperation movement and before what were the incidents happened in Indian history. So let me recall the topics which we have covered in the part 1, and in part 2 later let me continue the part 3 from history chapter 2, that is about the nationalism in India. In part 1 I have explained about the discovery of sea route to India by the Vasco da Gama in 1498. This was the first step for the establishment of European traders in India. Then after the discovery of sea route to India by the Vasco da Gama in 1498, Portuguese traders came to India and had established their trade centers in the different parts of the country, then followed by the Netherlands traders, who were called as the Dutch traders, also came to India and had established their trade centers in the different parts of the country, then followed by the British traders, then Danish traders who came to India from the Denmark, and at last the French traders came to India. Thus these European companies had established their trade centers in both the east and the west coast. Later these European companies were engaged in wars with each other. Then finally the other four European countries like French, Danish, Dutch and Portuguese traders left the country because they could not compete with the British East India Company. Thus British East India Company was the only trading company was there in India. After that, British East India Company wanted to expand their trade transactions in the entire country, and they wanted to enter into the Indian politics because at that time there were many drawbacks from the Indian administration. There was no proper leadership, there were no powerful rulers in India, there was no unity among the Indians. These were the main drawbacks from the Indian side. That is why British East India Company wanted to expand their administration and they wanted to rule the country. In this way, in 1757 they fought with Nawab of Bengal, that is Siraj Uddaulla, at Plassey. The battle we can call it as the Plassey battle. Then again in 1764 one more battle was happened between the Indian rulers Mir Qasim group and the East India Company. Then after the Buxar battle, East India Company they occupied the Bengal province and they became the real rulers and they started independent administration. That was the establishment of British administration first in India in 1764. After that, they extended their administration in South India. Thus they fought with the Mysore rulers with the Hyder Ali and Tippu Sultan. The wars between the Mysore kingdom rulers and the British East India Company were called as the Anglo-Mysore Wars. There were 4 Anglo-Mysore Wars were happened between the Mysore rulers and the East India Company. Then finally the Mysore administration came under the control of East India Company. They occupied and they became the rulers in the South India. Then they concentrated on the western part. At the time western part was under the control of powerful dynasty rulers, that was the Maratha dynasty rulers. The Maratha rulers were very powerful. They fought with East India Company in 3 different wars. The wars we can call it as the Anglo-Maratha Wars. Finally the British East India Company occupied the Maratha kingdom, and they extended their administration in the western part also. Then not only these methods, they followed the other different methods for the expansion of their administration in the entire country. In that, one famous policy they introduced was known as the doctrine of lapse. Doctrine of lapse policy was introduced by the Lord Dalhousie in 1835. According to this doctrine of lapse, if any Indian ruler died without a male child or successor, then his or her kingdom would be comes under the control of East India Company. Thus, many small independent kingdoms were occupied by the British East India Company. Then one more policy they introduced, that is the subsidiary alliance. According to the subsidiary alliance also, many of the Indian kingdoms were occupied by the British East India Company. And against to all these policies and the methods by the British East India Company, Indian leaders fought against the British government in 1857. The revolt, we can call it as the 1857 revolt, which was also popularly known as the First War of Indian Independence. The British East India Company easily suppressed the 1857 revolt because there were many drawbacks from the Indian side. There was no proper leadership. Indians did not have any training. They did not have any weapons. Like they did not know the war techniques. That is why it was easily suppressed by the British East India Company. After that, one national organization was established by the Indian leaders, that was known as the INC, Indian National Congress, which was established in 1885. From 1885 to till 1947, getting independence, the INC worked under the different leaderships that we can divide it into three major parts. One is the moderates period, second one is extremist period, third one is the Gandhian period. Moderates period is from 1885 to 1905. Extremist period is from 1905 to 1919. From 1919 to till 1947, Indian National Congress was under the control of Mahatma Gandhi. Thus, finally in 1947, India got its independence. So, this was the information which we have learned in the part 1. And in part 2, I have explained from 1915 what happened in 1915. We can recall in 1915 Mahatma Gandhi returned to India from South Africa, where he fought against to the policy of apartheid or racial discrimination. Then after that, he went to the different parts of the country. He observed the conditions of Indians under the control of British East India Company. Then the first time he organized one movement against to the British East India Company in 1917, which one we can call it as the Champaran Satyagraha. Champaran was a place located in the present state of Bihar, where the farmers protested against to the British East India Company. Thus, Mahatma Gandhi organized this Champaran Satyagraha and supported to the Indian farmers. This was the first movement organized by Mahatma Gandhi in the Indian national movement. Later again in 1917, Kheda was a place located in the Gujarat. There, the farmers who fought against to the British East India Company, in which Mahatma Gandhi organized this Satyagraha movement, and he supported to the farmers, and he demanded the British East India Company to withdraw the taxes imposed on the Indian farmers. And the third movement was started by Mahatma Gandhi in Gujarat, that is at Ahmedabad, for supporting to the workers of cotton mills. So these were the three important movements organized by Mahatma Gandhi from 1917 to 1918. So thus Mahatma Gandhi entered in the Indian national movement. Then he continued till 1947. Under his leadership, India got its independence in 1947. Okay, let me explain one more incident happened in 1919. By seeing all these movements against the British East India Company, In 1919, British East India Company had introduced one act that we can call it as the Rowlatt Act. According to the Rowlatt Act, the British government has the immense power to arrest any Indian without trial. Against to this 1919 Rowlatt Act, some of the Indians they protested against, and they started a movement against to the Rowlatt Act of 1919. And at the same time, when the First World War was ended in 1918, then the powers of Khalifa in Turkey was removed by the winners group in the First World War. To support to the Khalifa and to restore the powers of Khalifa in Turkey, all the Muslims in India and in the entire world started a movement against to the British government. Even in India also, some of the Muslims they protested against the British government to restore the powers of Khalifa, because Khalifa was the main leader for the entire Muslim community in the world. This movement we can call it as the Khilafat movement, which was organized by the Muslims and the Hindus also together, which was started in 1919. Now again, by seeing these Rowlatt Act and Khilafat movements, to protest these movements, Indians conducted one meeting at Jallianwala Bagh at Amritsar. In that meeting, when the Indians were conducting silently, then General Dyer he entered into the ground with his troops and he gave shoot and sight orders against to the Indians. In that incident, more than 10,000 Indians were killed by the British Army. So against to this incident and many other British government methods and their administration, their policies, in 1920 non-cooperation movement was started, later civil disobedience movement, and again in 1922 this non-cooperation movement was stopped. All these informations which we are going to learn in part 3. This is the information which we have learned in part 2, and in part 3 the detailed information about non-cooperation movement in 1920 and 1922 call of the non-cooperation movement and 1930 civil disobedience movement, which we will learn in the part 3. In part 3, the main topics which we are going to learn are differing strands within the movement. Under this, the movement in the towns, rebellions in the cities, the second topic is rebellion in the countryside, Swaraj in the plantations. These three are the subtopics which I am going to explain in today's lesson. And also I am going to explain about towards civil disobedience movement under the first subtopic, that is the Salt March and the civil disobedience. These are the subtopics which I am going to explain in part 3 of nationalism in India from history. Under the first, today's topic is about differing strands within the movement. The non-cooperation Khilafat movement began in January 1921. Various social groups participated in this movement, each with its own specific aspirations, which means almost all the sections in the society was participated in this non-cooperation movement and the Khilafat movement, but their aspirations were different from one region to another region and from one community to another community. For farmers community, their aspiration was different, and workers' aim was different, and the Muslims' aim was different. Thus, people were having the different aims, but commonly they participated in the non-cooperation movement and in Khilafat movements. All of them responded to the call of Swaraj, but the term meant different things to different people. Anyhow, overall, there was a unity among the people against to the British government. Under the first subtopic is the movement in the towns. Even on those days were also there were towns and the cities, and large number of people were living in the village areas, that is in the rural areas. Very less number of people were living in the towns and the cities. The movement started with middle class participated in the cities, because generally the rich farmers and the rich people always to support the British East India Company. Only the middle class people and the poor people were against to the British government and their policies. Thousands of students left government controlled schools and colleges, headmasters and teachers resigned, and lawyers gave up their legal practices. Under the non-cooperation movement, when the Mahatma Gandhi decided to launch the non-cooperation movement, when he gave a slogan against the British government, that is about Swaraj, and against to the British government and their manufacturing goods and services, and whoever were studying in the government schools and colleges, the students left the schools and colleges. They came out and they participated in the non-cooperation movement, which was against to the British East India Company. And the teachers and headmasters who were working under the government sector, they resigned to their jobs, and they also participated against to the British government in the non-cooperation and Khilafat movements. And the lawyers also gave up their legal practices, and they also joined in this movement. Thus almost all the sections of the people, they left their organizations, their occupations, their activities, and they joined in the non-cooperation movement and in Khilafat movement actively. The council elections were boycotted in most provinces except Madras, where the Justice Party, the party of the non-Brahmins, felt that entering the councils was one way of gaining the power, something that usually only Brahmins had access to. But in some places there are some misunderstandings. In some places, some of the organizations, they opposed and they wanted to participate in the elections, and they wanted to join as members in the legislative councils. Thus they wanted to protest against the British government policies and their administration. In remaining places, the people, they opposed and they rejected the election process. Foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops picketed, and foreign cloth burnt in the huge bonfires. These were the different methods practiced in the non-cooperation movement from the 1920 to 1922 2 years. The import of foreign cloth halved between 1921 and 1922, its value dropping from 102 crores to 57 crores. Previously, almost all the goods were manufactured by the East India Company, were purchased by the Indians. When the non-cooperation movement started, then the purchasing of foreign goods were boycotted. The goods which were made by the Indians only purchased by the Indians. Thus, here the value of cotton cloth and the goods, foreign goods value was decreased from 102 crores to the 57 crores. There was a huge loss to the British East India Company due to the policy of boycotting foreign goods. In many places, merchants and traders refused to trade in foreign goods or finance foreign trade. These were the other different methods followed in the non-cooperation movement. As the boycott movement spread and people began discarding imported clothes and wearing only the Indian ones, production of Indian textile mills and handlooms went up. When the Indians, they boycotted the foreign goods and they started purchasing of Indian goods, thus the goods of Indian industries were increased in the trade transactions, that is the demand for Indian goods were increased, and those who are engaged in the work of manufacturing cloth in India, so they got some profits, and number of people got employment opportunities. Thus, Indian goods trade transactions were increased a lot and the foreign goods transactions were decreased. This movement in the cities gradually slowed down for a variety of reasons. Only in the initial stage, almost all the sections of the people were actively participated, but later the movement was slowly decreased due to the different reasons. The first reason was khadi cloth was often more expensive than mass produced mill cloth and poor people could not afford to buy it. The first reason was in the initial stage almost all the Indians were boycotted the foreign goods, but later what happened, the Indians they started again purchasing the foreign goods because the cost of Indian cloth was greater than the cost of foreign cloth. So that is why here the Indians that is especially from the poor sections they were unable to purchase the foreign Indian cloth with higher prices. For the movement to be successful, alternative Indian institutions had to be set up so that they could be used in place of the British ones. But at the time, Indians were unable to establish the number of companies and they were unable to produce the quantity required to the Indians. These were slow to come up. Means establishment of Indians it takes many years of time. These were the some drawbacks which were happened in the non-cooperation movement. That is where the movement was later slowly decreased its participants. And the second subtopic which I am going to explain in this lesson is that is rebellions in the countryside. In Awadh, we know very well Awadh, which is a place located in the present state of Uttar Pradesh. Now we are calling it as Ayodhya. We know very well the importance of Ayodhya. It is the birthplace of Sri Rama. In that, peasants were led by Baba Ramchandra. The movement here was against talukdars and the landlords. Peasants had to do beggar and work at landlords' farms without any payment. The peasant movement demanded reduction of revenue, abolition of beggar and social boycott of oppressive landlords. In Ayodhya, there were large number of farmers and there were talukdars and the landlords. The landlords and the talukdars were used the services of the farmers from dawn to dusk without paying any amount as salaries or the wages. This we can call it as the slavery system. Against to the slavery system, peasants they started a movement against to the British government, especially to the talukdars and the landlords, which was supported by one of the famous leader from that region who was popularly known as Ramchandra. And in that the farmers the talukdars and the landlords were collected the huge revenue. Against to this also, the peasants together they started a movement against the British East India Company under the leadership of Ramchandra. This was the first movement against the East India Company under the non-cooperation movement. In many places, Nai-Dobi Bandhs were organized by panchayats to deprive landlords of the services of even barbers and the washermen. Not only the farmers, in some places the other people those who are engaged in the different activities like the barbers, then the washermen and many other sections of the people also they stopped their activities and they also joined in the non-cooperation movement actively. In June 1920, Jawaharlal Nehru began going around the villages in Awadh talking to the villagers and trying to understand their grievances. By October, the Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, Baba Ramchandra and a few others. Within a month, over 300 branches had been set up in the villages around the region. When the peasants started a movement against the talukdars and the landlords, even the other sections of the people in the society also supported and they also protested against the British East India Company. Then Jawaharlal Nehru entered into this protest and he supported to the farmers and other sections of the people in the society. He encouraged, and finally one organization was established that we can call it as the Awadh Kisan Sabha, and its branches were established and extended in the entire region. There were more than 300 branches had been established against to the British East India Company. As the movement spread in 1921, the houses of talukdars and merchants were attacked, bazaars were looted. Then people slowly in initial stages they protested against, but later they did not follow the same method. They attacked on the talukdars and the landlords. Whatever the materials, grains and money was available, that everything was looted by the farmers and the other sections of the people from the talukdars and the landlords' houses. In many places, local leaders told peasants that Gandhiji had declared that no taxes were to be paid and land was to be redistributed among the people. In the Gudem hills of Andhra Pradesh, for instance, a militant guerrilla movement spread in the early 20s. So till now, whatever we learned, the events were happened in the North India, that is in the Uttar Pradesh and its surroundings. But in the South India, especially in the Andhra Pradesh, the Gudem hills means the tribals, those who had established their settlements in the forest areas and in the hilly regions, there the movement was guerrilla movement was started against to the British government in 1920s. There were many reasons for the revolt against the British East India Company by the tribals in the remote areas. One is basically the tribals were depending on the forest areas when the British government introduced the Forest Act and imposed many restrictions on the movement of the tribals in the forest areas. Thus the tribal people, they lost their employment opportunities, even the livelihood also. For that, all the tribals together under the leadership of Alluri Sita Ramaraj, they protested against the British East India Company. The colonial government had closed large forest areas, preventing people from the entering the forest to graze their cattle or to collect fuel, wood and fruits from the forest areas. This enraged the hill people. Not only were their livelihoods affected, but they felt that their traditional rights were being denied. Because of all these methods and the policies by the East India Company, under the leadership of Alluri Sita Ramaraju, all the tribal people, they fought against to the British government. Alluri Sita Ramaraj claimed that he had a variety of special powers. He could make correct astrological predictions and heal people, and he could survive even bullet shots. The Gudem rebels attacked police stations, attempted to kill British officials, and carried on guerrilla warfare for achieving Swaraj. Raju was captured and executed in 1924 and over time became a folk hero. Under the leadership of Alluri Sita Ramaraju, his followers attacked on the British East India Company departments. They killed a number of police people. Then finally the British East India Company army, they captured the Alluri Sita Ramaraju and finally they executed him in 1924. These were the incidents happened in the Indian history in South India, that is especially in the Andhra Pradesh. Now the next subtopic which I am going to explain in this lesson is about Swaraj in the plantations. Under the Inland Emigration Act of 1859, plantation workers in Assam were not permitted to leave the tea gardens without permission, and in fact they were rarely given such permission. Actually, this movement started in the northeastern states of Assam, because Assam, which was famous for the tea plantations, where large number of people were engaged in the tea plantations as daily wage workers. There the owners, they did not allow them to the outside. They did not give any kind of permission to go to their homes and villages. When they heard of non-cooperation movement, thousands of workers defied the authorities, left the plantations and headed home. They believed that Gandhi Raj was coming and everyone would be given land in their own villages. So they also expected that when they heard about the information about the non-cooperation movement, they thought that even the movement also will spread even in Assam, and they also will get some independence. They will get some freedom from the landlords and the owners of these tea plantations. They, however, never reached their destination, stranded on the way by railway and steamer strike. They were caught by the police and brutally beaten up. But whatever they expected, which was not happened, they followed the different methods against to the owners of tea plantation, but finally the police, they brutally beaten up these people. And at last in 1922 at Chowri Chowra, some of the Indians, they attacked on the police station. Then they set a fire to the police station and 22 police people were killed. After this incident, Mahatma Gandhi called off the non-cooperation movement. Now let me explain the places where the movements started from 1920 to 1922, 2 years of time. The first movement started by the peasants at Awadh under the leadership of Ramchandra, which is located in the present state of Uttar Pradesh, which we can see on the map of India. And the second movement started by Alluri Sita Ramaraj in Andhra Pradesh. And the third movement is plantations, that is in Assam. Now let me explain the third topic from this chapter, that is about nationalism in India, is towards civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is nothing but not to obey the rules and regulations which were imposed, which were made by the British East India Company. In February 1922, Mahatma Gandhi decided to withdraw the non-cooperation movement because of Chowri Chowra incident. We know very well, just now we discussed about in 1922 some of the Indians, they attacked on the Chowri Chowra police station and they set a fire to the police station. Thus 22 police people were killed. When Mahatma Gandhi thought that this non-cooperation movement is changing into the violent methods, then immediately he called off the non-cooperation movement. He felt the movement was turning violent in many places and satyagrahis needed to be properly trained before they would be ready for mass struggles. Mass means large number of people, they would participate in the non-violent methods. Within the Congress, some leaders were by now tired of mass struggle and wanted to participate in elections to the provincial councils that had been set up by the Government of India Act of 1990. Here there were many differences among the Indian leaders, because some of the Indian leaders, they thought that they wanted to participate in the elections according to the 1919 Act, and some were refused to participate in the elections. They felt that it was important to oppose British policies within the councils, argue the reform, and also demonstrate that these councils were not truly democratic. Some were argued that by entering into the provincial councils only we can argue with the British government, and whatever the demands from Indian side we can get from the British government. C.R. Das, which means Sitaranjan Das, and the Motilal Nehru formed the Swaraj Party within the Congress to argue for a return to council politics. But younger leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose pressed for more radical mass agitation and for full independence. Here, the Indian National Congress was divided into two groups. One is under the leadership of C.R. Das, one is under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru. C.R. Das and his group argued that they wanted to establish one special party, that is Swaraj Party, to get the independence. but Jawaharlal Nehru wanted to continue the Indian National Congress to fight against the British government till getting independence. The new Tory government in Britain constituted a statutory commission under Sir John Simon. In 1927, the British Parliament had established one commission for the administration of British East India Company in India. In this commission, there were 7 members, all the 7 members from the Britishers only. No Indian was in that Simon Commission. That is why Indians opposed and they gave slogan Simon Go Back. Set up in response to the nationalist movement, the commission was to look into the functioning of the constitutional system in India and suggest changes. The problem was the commission did not have a single Indian member, they were all British. That is why Indians opposed and they gave slogan Simon Go Back, Simon Go Back. When the Simon Commission arrived in India in 1928, it was greeted with the slogan Go Back Simon. All parties including the Congress and the Muslim League participated in the demonstrations. In an effort to win them over, the Viceroy Lord Irwin announced in October 1929 a vague offer of dominion status for India in an unspecified future and a roundtable conference to discuss a future constitution. After this commission, when Indians were opposed to Simon Commission, then at the time India was under the control of Viceroy Lord Irwin, he announced in 1929 that India would get a dominion status unspecified, and also the roundtable conferences are going to be held in the London, and in that roundtable conferences the formation of constitution about the Indian government will be discussed. In December 1929, under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Lahore Congress formalized the demand for Purna Swaraj or full independence for India. It was declared that 26 January 1930 would be declared as the independence. So before that only, under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Indian National Congress has declared independence to India in 1930 January 26th. Then in the next subtopic, which I am going to explain about the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement. On 31st January 1930, he sent a letter to Viceroy Irwin stating 11 demands. Mahatma Gandhi wrote a letter to the Viceroy Irwin and he demanded the 11 demands from the Indian side. Some of these were of general interest, others were specified demands of different classes from the industrialists and the peasants. Out of all the 11 demands, some demands from the peasants, some demands from the merchants, some demands from the industrialists, some demands from the common people, and some demands to the independence of our country. The idea was to make the demands wide ranging so that all classes within Indian society could identify with them and everyone could be brought together in a united campaign. The main aim of Mahatma Gandhi, he wanted to bring the unity among the Indians. That is why he made 11 demands from the different sections of the people in the society. The most stirring of all was the demand to abolish the salt tax. Salt was something consumed by the rich and the poor alike, and it was one of the most essential item of the food. In 1930, what happened? The British government imposed the tax on the salt. Those who are making salt from the sea water, they have to pay some tax to the British government. Against to this method and the policy, the Indians started a movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. This movement we can call it as the Salt Satyagraha or Dandi March. Mahatma Gandhi's letter was in a way an ultimatum if the demands were not fulfilled by 11th March. The letter stated the Congress would launch a civil disobedience movement. Irwin was unwilling to negotiate. So Mahatma Gandhi started his famous Salt March accompanied by 78 of his trusted volunteers. When the Viceroy of British East India Company did not accept the demands of the Mahatma Gandhi, then Mahatma Gandhi launched the civil disobedience movement in 1930. Then he started a movement, Salt March, with his followers of 78. The march was over 240 miles from Gandhiji's ashram in Sabarmati to the Gujarat coastal town of Dandi. The volunteers walked for 24 days, about 10 miles a day. On 6th April, he reached Dandi and ceremonially violated the law manufacturing salt by boiling seawater. A frightened government responded with a policy of brutal repression. Peacefully, satyagrahis were attacked, women and children were beaten, and about 1 lakh people were arrested. These were the incidents happened. In such a situation, Mahatma Gandhi once again decided to call off the movement and entered into a pact of Irvine on 5th March 1931. Because when this movement also going into the violent methods, when the British government arrested 1 lakh people and they brutally followed the repression methods, for that Mahatma Gandhi again call up the civil disobedience movement. After that, the round table conferences were held in London. By this Gandhi-Irvine Pact, Gandhiji consented to participate in a round table conference in London, and the government agreed to release the political prisoners. Whoever were arrested by the British government, so they promised to release the Indian leaders before the first round table conference. In December 1931, Gandhiji went to the London for the conference, but the negotiation broke down and he returned disappointed. Back in India, he discovered that the government had begun a new cycle of repression. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan and Jawaharlal Nehru were both in jail. So just they promised that they wanted to give the independence and they wanted to make a constitution for the Indian administration. But when the Indian leaders went to the round table conferences, whatever the demands from Indian side, they did not accept. That is why they came back and again they started a movement against the British government. So this is the information from the part 2. In part 3 and in the part 4, I am going to explain the remaining entire concept from the history chapter 2, that is about nationalism in India. Thank you. Once again, if you like my videos, please subscribe, like, comment.